Hi, I'm Paul Offord and it's good to be with you again, and today I'm going to talk about Kafka. Kafka is a messaging system, and the concepts that are used are that a message is produced by a producer and consumed by a consumer. So we produce the message into a topic, a Kafka topic, and we then consume messages from that topic. We can have multiple topics in a Kafka node. Kafka nodes can be clustered, and there are all sorts of other both high availability and scalability options regarding Kafka, which we won't cover today. The topic resides in the file system of the Kafka node, and so it's resilient to, say, the node failing and then coming back up. All of the topic queue messages will still be there, ready to be consumed. The great thing about Kafka is that you can have a many-to-many relationship between sources of messages and destinations, and a very common use for Kafka is to distribute log data. So for example, our syslog data coming out of our switches and routers can be distributed to, say, a network operations tool. We can then just add another producer to produce data to the same topic with very little effort, actually, which we'll see later. So for example, we can then add in the load balancer logs, and then we can add firewall logs. Now this probably doesn't show the real strength of Kafka and its flexibility, because it's the consumer side that's quite impressive. So if you were to do this in a traditional manner, you would perhaps point the log agents in each of these technologies to your network operations tool. But the trouble is that if you then want to add another tool, you have to duplicate the configuration and produce messages into that other tool. But not if you have Kafka in the middle. Because what you can do is you can simply add another system, such as a golden signal monitoring system, that can read from the topic and pick up exactly the same data. And then you can add another one, such as a security team forensic system. So this many-to-many relationship and this loose coupling between the producer and the consumer gives you a very flexible solution. Quite easy to manage, certainly very easy to scale. Let's look at a demo. Here's my demo environment. It's actually two virtual machines, one called Jupyter, one called Elkison. Elkison is actually running the Kafka node. So a Kafka node has a minimum of two services. So the first service is called Kafka, and you can see I have that running. But there's also another service called Zookeeper. Zookeeper is a sort of overarching monitor. There are a number of reasons you need it. I'm not going to go into that here. Again, that's something you can look up on YouTube or in the documentation. So anyway, we have a successful Kafka node running here, and let's go back to our client machine. Now, Kafka comes with some command line producers and consumers. So I've installed Kafka also on my client machine, but I'm not actually running it as a Kafka node. I just installed it just so that I could get the shell scripts. So I'm going to start a producer first. So let's see the command. Here we have the simple command for the shell script, and then we have the fact that it's going to connect to my Elkison machine on port 9092. And it's going to produce messages into the topic CSP test. So let's run that. So that's ready to go. You can see you get this little angle prompt. Now let's start up a consumer. So here's the consumer. It's going to the same server. It's got an IP address instead of the name, but this is the Elkison server. Same topic. And then we have this group definition, which I'll explain that in a second. But let's run this first. Okay, now so if we start to put in messages into the producer, you can see that they appear in the consumer. Nothing very exciting there. Of course, these messages I'm typing here could actually be the a whole log message from a server, and obviously in that case the producer would be a bit more sophisticated than a simple command line producer. Okay, so I'm going to start another consumer here, and it's going to the same server, same topic, and it has this group definition again. So let's start that, and now let's put in some more messages into the producer. Can you see that the messages are being split between the two consumers? So this is how you can achieve a level of load balancing or achieve higher capacity. You can have multiple consumers, and I believe it's up to, might be 64, I think it might be. You can have multiple consumers consuming from the same topic but operating as a group, so they're splitting the load. Now if I start another consumer over here, but I'm not this time going to specify the group parameter, let's start that consumer, and now if I put in some more messages, did that a bit wrong, but I think you get the idea. So you can see now that we're still splitting the load across the top two consumers, but this consumer down here, because it's not operating in the same group, it's receiving every message. So that's the basic operation of Kafka. So I hope you can see how you can easily extend the use of a topic. In the demo we had basically two consumers. One consumer had two processes consuming as a group, working in tandem, and then we had one that was consuming separately. So I think you can see that if you can imagine that the network operations tools had two consumer processes running, and then we had a security team forensics tool that had a single consumer, you can see how you can easily extend this just by adding more consumers, connecting them to the same topic, and then consuming the same data. Now, of course, a few things here. There are security measures that you can take. You can have certificates, the traffic can be encrypted, but setting that aside, this is still a very extendable solution for the distribution of log data. And in fact, it's very popular as a mechanism sitting in the middle of a system that works around microservices, for example, distributing messages between microservices. So in the next part, we'll take a look at the network trace data, and we'll see how Kafka behaves on the network. Speak to you soon.